This particular gospel has a special place in my heart because when I was a deacon, I was asked to proclaim this gospel in front of 20,000 people and then a couple million people on TV. It was a very terrifying existence, and I had to do it in Spanish, and I was just learning Spanish at this time. And so I asked the little Mexican sisters who were with us, how did my Spanish go? And they're like, well, you are like someone learning right now. And that was their way of saying it was raw and rough. But whenever I see this reading, I just remember that very scary moment there. So this is the reading of Divine Mercy Sunday. And it's important for us to even ask that question, what is mercy? We celebrate divine mercy, but what does it actually mean? It doesn't mean that game that maybe we used to play when we were younger called Mercy. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay. It's a painful one where you take the other person's hand and you squeeze it until the person cries out, mercy. If that's Divine Mercy Sunday, that would be terrifying. God squeezing us and we have to say mercy. That's not what we're celebrating. It's also not this experience of a king who is looking at his slave saying, I'm going to give you mercy. I'm going to just let you off the hook, but I'm going to keep you down there. It's not that saying, I'm better than you, squash, mercy. It's not that. But what it is, and St. Thomas Aquinas has the most beautiful definition where he says, it's this love that's willing to hurt and suffer as it goes outside of itself and comes down to human brokenness and lifts it up and restores it to lost dignity. That's what mercy is. When Jesus Christ came among us, he came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. His paschal mystery, in which his heart literally broke open for us, that blood and water came down to the lowest level of us to lift us up. If you think about just physics and science, if you have water, it's going to find, if it's poured out into nooks and crannies and caverns, it's not going to be content just staying at the top. It's going to find its way, running all the way down to the very, very bottom. And that's God's love, willing to be poured out so that it runs to the very, very bottom of brokenness, not to keep us there, but to actually pick us up. It's the image of the father in the prodigal son, seeing his son just so bent over in brokenness that he comes and he lifts that son up. The son thought he would just stay a slave. That's all that he was asking for. But the father scoops him up and says, in my mercy, I make you my son again, so we can celebrate. And that's what the Lord's doing in this gospel reading today, because he's conquering the fear of the disciples. He's coming into their brokenness. He's coming into their very betrayal of him, because the last time that they saw him, they ran away from him. They denied him. And now they didn't even go to his crucifixion. One of them did, the beloved disciple John, but everyone else, they didn't even go to his death. And now Jesus is coming through that wall. And imagine what they probably thought. He's come to get us. He's come to have his vengeance upon us. I mean, imagine you. If you were Jesus and your best friends just ran away from you, they weren't even there when you were suffering and dying on the cross, and then you see them again, what would your first words be? His first words are, peace be with you. And he says it 2 times because they can't believe it. You would love me this much? After I ran away from you, after I betrayed you, after I denied you? And notice how he says it again. Peace be with you. It's his way of saying, I really mean this. I'm coming through that I'm going through the locked door right into the bottom of your heart. The part that right now is broken and dark and cold, in order to bring light there. I'm the very water of God flowing down to that nook and cranny, that closet, that we think that if God really sees it, he wouldn't really love us. That's the temptation of Adam and Eve, to just stay hidden. And yet the Lord is looking for us, saying, where are you? Not in vengeance, but saying, where are you? I want to heal you. Please give me that part of your heart. And notice what he does. After he gives that peace, he says, as the Father sent me. So how did the Father how was Jesus sent? To be that water of God going all the way to the very dregs of humanity in order to lift it up? As the Father has sent me to do that, so now I send you to do that. That's what it means to live the message of divine mercy, is to receive the blood and water which gushed forth from the side of Christ as a fount of mercy for us, to be able to say, I trust in you. I trust that you love me unconditionally, and you come in search of me. That's the image of divine mercy. He's coming into our darkness, and if you look at his feet, he's actually moving towards us. So he's coming looking for us. He finds us, he lifts us up, and he brings us back home. And then he says, you need to go out and do the same thing. So maybe to think about this week, how do we think about being an agent of divine mercy? How do we start every single day saying, Lord, who are you sending me to? How are you calling me to be like this blood and water? How am I called to pour myself out so that I can flow according to your providential plan to find that person that you're calling me to share love with? Share mercy, forgiveness. Notice how it says here, receive the Holy Spirit. He breathes upon the apostles saying, I'm equipping you for this because you can't do it on your own. You can't go to those places. You can't go to those places of forgiving someone. You can't go to those places of reaching out of your comfort zone to be able to be that vessel of mercy unless I put my very spirit within you. If I put my water and blood within you, only then do you have the ability to go to those places that only I can go. Because remember, it's him who's living within us. It's not our own power. But we have to say yes, like Mary. I'm the handmaid of the Lord. Be it done unto me according to your word. And notice it says, whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, whose sins you retain are retained. And this definitely is that beginning of the beautiful gift of confession, which is also beautiful on this particular day of celebrating mercy. But it also is something in which when we go out as agents of mercy, we can help unlock chains. We can helping people rise from their tombs and experience life again. Now, this happened in a very real way within my own life, and I just want to share this story that I have shared with you before, but it's important to tell the story over and over again. So for those of you who remember my story of conversion, I had a very difficult coming from 8th grade into 9th grade. I had a small class of, I think, 8, 2 boys and 6 girls. And I went into a class of 1,000. Catholic school into public school, bigger than any Naperville school in Montgomery County in Maryland. For some people, they're like, this is awesome, I get to meet people. But for me, it worked the opposite way. And I became a black hole. I pulled away from everyone. I was the one kid sitting in the corner of the lunchroom, just eating and just thinking that everyone is looking at me and laughing at me. I actually had a very difficult middle school in which I was bullied. I was a little bigger sized at that particular time, and I was made fun of because of that. And that carried over into the beginning of my high school. And so my dignity was shot. I didn't think I was lovable. And coming into this whole new situation in which everyone had their circle of friends except me was not a good mixture. And I won't go into more details of it, but let's just say I started spiraling into a very dark place that I would never wish anyone else to go to. But there was someone, and I still remember, his name is Danny. I remember one day, halfway through my freshman year, I see him walk over to me across the cafeteria. And he looks at me and he says, "Andy, do you want to come and sit with us? Do you want to eat with us?" And at first, I was so walled up that at first I kind of didn't say anything. And I was thinking, well, he's going to have me go over there and everyone's going to make fun of me and it'll be worse. Then I started to see in his eyes and in his smile and just his way of being that he actually was very authentic. And I took that risk. And I went with him across that cafeteria. And I realized that this particular group, they were smiling, they were welcoming me, and I probably looked like a dork because I was so excited that I went around and I shook everybody's hand in the lunchroom. I mean, just think about that in a public high school. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Andy. Hi, I'm Andy. Hi, I'm Andy." They're like, "You're kind of weird, but okay, you can join us." And something just kind of broke open in that. And I started to feel the experience of being loved. And I started to realize that every single one of the people there, we were all in that same situation of wondering, are we truly lovable? Some people hit it better than others, but we were all in the same boat. And so as that started to open in my own heart of the joy that was given to me because someone took a risk, I started to learn how to do that for others. And I started to go out into the corner of the lunchroom and to smile and welcome. And we started to create this fun little weird society of people, everyone from goths to academics to theater to football players. And we'd just hang out and watch the Muppets. I mean, it was a very weird group, but it was a very fun group. And there was this experience of loving the person right in front of us. And that whole experience brought my darkest days to actually be some of my most joyful days. And what it did in my heart is it put something in my heart to learn how to love more. Who you see here is someone very, very different than middle school and high school. Still the same person, but someone who came alive because someone was sent out to bring that warmth of mercy. And it made me rise from the tomb and allow my flower to actually bloom. And it's helped me to experience also that experience of suffering. The Lord didn't take away the wounds when he rose from the dead, but he actually transformed them to become conduits of healing. And so that wound of my time of the past became something that he didn't necessarily take away and say it never happened, but he said, "I'm going to transform this so that you can learn how to be with those that are hurting, how to have more compassionate heart, and ultimately look back at that moment and realize all of that the Lord used to allow my heart to be the heart that it is right now." This is the message of divine mercy. And I share that one story because it's a simple story of someone smiling and just welcoming. Think about what the Lord's calling you to do every single day. Who are those in the periphery? Who are those that you're being called, maybe within your own family, within your own school, within your own workplace, wherever? And where are you called to be that hand of God touching the suffering flesh of Christ and allowing it to come alive again in mercy. Mercy is God's love poured out, not to push down, but to lift up and restore to being a child of God.